All right, so one of the reasons communication is so tough in relationships is because what we think we're communicating is often not the same thing the other person is hearing. And if you've ever been in a text argument where there should have been no argument, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You thought you were texting one thing and they heard something completely different, started coming back with all caps, and then went downhill from here. So, in relationships, men, it's important for men to feel respected, and disrespect is a big deal for men. So ladies, what often happens in relationship is men are feeling disrespected because they're hearing disrespect in ways that the ladies are not trying to disrespect them. So my goal in this video is just to get wives and husbands on the same page by looking at 3 areas where husbands often hear disrespect even when the wives are not trying to disrespect them. Before we jump into that, if you don't already have your copy of RelationShots, I don't know what you've been doing. This is a practical guide for relationship success, 52 chapters, complete with 52 topics, with couple questions, and a QR code back to a video if you want some video support on as well. So if you've not yet bought that, you need to go grab it. It's great. And you're watching RelationShots channel, so you obviously value the content. Is full of it. And if you haven't already downloaded our free guide to intimacy, you'll see that link in the description area below. So disrespect. What I'm going to do in this video is give you 3 areas where men hear disrespect even when women are not trying to give disrespect. And before I give you those 3 women, what I don't want you doing as we go through these is going, oh, I just guess I can't say anything to him. He just feels disrespect all the time. I have a perfect solution for you. Now I'm going to give you at the end of this video. So just listen to the 3 points without saying, oh, so I just can't say anything. You can say something, but when you say it and how you say it's important, I'm going to give you a tool for that at the end. So the first area where men often hear disrespect is when they're hearing inadequacy. So men love to be able to figure things out. Men value accomplishment. Men value having the ability to get things done. So anytime they hear from their wives something that seems to speak to their inadequacy in an area, what they're also going to feel is disrespect in that area. So it may be something simple, like you're out to dinner with friends, you're all hanging out, somebody's talking about something in their house that's broken and how they fixed it, and your husband's not very handy, and you say something like, oh, Mike, he's not really the fix-it kind of person. That may be entirely true, but when you make that statement, you are highlighting an inadequacy in him, reminding him of inadequacy, and not only doing it for him, but you're doing it in front of other people. He's going to hear disrespect in that area. So wives, I need you to be thinking about that when you make comments, when you joke, when you have different suggestions. Are these things highlighting an area of inadequacy where there's a lack of ability for your husband? Because if you do, they're going to hear disrespect. And that doesn't matter if it's about the backyard, the basement, the boardroom, or the bedroom. If they feel they're hearing inadequacy, what they're also going to feel is disrespect in the moment. So I just need you to think about that when you're mentioning things, even if it's in the context of a joke. They may be sensitive to it, it may hurt, and they may feel inadequate, thus feeling disrespected in the relationship. A second area where men often feel disrespected is when they're hearing disappointment. Contrary to what you may believe, your husband actually does want you to be happy, actually does want you to feel fulfilled. So when they hear things that sound like disappointment to them, they're also going to feel disrespect in that moment. In fact, when surveyed, what they did find was that many men, even when they're reminded of something by their wife, heard inadequacy, disappointment, and disrespect. And the fact that I had to come back and remind you that something needed to be done, inherently what husbands heard is they had to remind me, which means they're frustrated, which means they're disappointed, and that feels like disrespect. Now, you probably heard the age-old joke, right? That I told you I was going to do it. You don't have to remind me every 6 months that it needs to be done still, right? That's a long-running joke for men. But many men in this survey, a third of men, when asked the question about if your wife were to remind you of something, how would you receive it? A third of men said they would hear it as nagging, and they would hear it as a statement of disappointment that they had not yet done the thing. And I know, again, what you're saying, oh, so I can't ever remind them of something? I already told you I have a solution for you. I'm just telling you that a reminder can often feel like disrespect for some men because they value the fact that they're eventually going to get it done and they can get it done. And so when they're reminded, they can sometimes hear that as disrespect. A third area where men feel disrespect is when they hear attack. Now again, sometimes wives, you are trying to attack and they're going to hear attack and you don't care if they feel disrespected. But a lot of times, men feel attacked even when wives don't think they're attacking. A lot of times that happens through questioning. Many wives are asking their husbands questions because they want to gather information and they also want to connect to their husband. So I'm asking you, why are you doing that? How are you doing that? What does that look like? Because I want to get in your world and I want to connect to you, especially if you have a husband who's not real communicative. That's one of your ways of connecting with them. But sometimes those questions can feel like criticism and attack. The reason you're asking me why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it that way and what am I doing is because you think I'm doing it wrong. You think you could do it better. You think I don't know what I'm doing, back to inadequacy again, and ultimately it can feel like attack for the man. So understand, I'm not saying you can't ever ask them questions. I'm just saying sometimes you may want to tee it up in a different way. In fact, when she was writing the book For Women Only, the author Shanti Feldhahn was coming up with questions to survey men, and she asked a man that she happened to be meeting with, hey, here's a question, tell me what you think. And the question was simply, do you know how to plan a romantic dinner or romantic event for your partner? And he said, oh, that's not going to work because that already sounds like attack. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the fact that you're asking that already is speaking to the fact that he's inept and doesn't know what he's doing. So he suggested maybe if you put it in context and soften it with something like, imagine there's a scenario where you have to plan an anniversary date for your spouse. Do you know how to plan a romantic dinner for your partner? And in the context, it was a little softer and he felt like would be received more. Now, I'm not saying you got to soften everything and come up with context, everything. I'm just giving you an example to help you get in the mind of men that sometimes the questions that you ask, you may not be meaning to, but they sound like attack because they're speaking to the ineptness or questioning whether he can really do it, and it feels like an attack. So those three areas where men can feel disrespected when they're hearing inadequacy, hearing disappointment, or hearing attack, we need to be sensitive to that. So yes, here's the answer to your question. Well, so I just got to walk around on eggshells and I can't ever say anything to him and that's not a relationship? No, what I'm saying is that when you have certain conversations and how you have certain conversations matters a lot in how they're received. I believe every couple should have a weekly staff meeting, a regular time where they're getting together to not only talk about logistics, budget, upcoming weeks, schedules, kids, all that kind of stuff, but it's also a dedicated time for giving and receiving feedback about the relationship where you're asking, hey, how's the relationship going in your mind? Or if you're working on something specific, hey, how have I been doing with following through on projects? How have I been doing with my tone? How have I been doing with being more affectionate? Whatever you've determined is something that needs to grow in the relationship, you're asking for feedback from your spouse. How am I doing in this area? When you do that, it is going to be received much better in an environment where we are going in to have this conversation. And not only that, but I'm asking for feedback instead of you just giving me feedback. So if your husband seems to be hearing inadequacy, disappointment, attack, it could be that if you do it at a specific time, weekly staff meeting, where you need to highlight mistakes, where you need to correct your partner, where you need to deal with an issue, if you do it at a specific time that you both know you're sitting down to do those kind of things, I promise you it's going to go way better than if you just decide to do it on Tuesday night right after dinner because you have a question and you need to address it. So there's three areas that men often hear disrespect, even if their wives are not trying to communicate disrespect, and a solution for you. I'd love to hear your comments on that. If you already do a staff meeting, tell us in the comment section, what does yours look like? Give some other people ideas as well. If we can help you in any area of your relationship, we'd love to be a part of your relationship journey. And if you've not already seen the What Does Respect Look Like to a Man video, check that out. And of course, if you haven't bought RelationShots the book yet, buy the book. And I'll see you next time right back here on RelationShots.